As most of you know, I've been trying to improve my digital painting skills, right? To just improve overall, and so I've decided to take a character from my series Apple Black, meet Alejandro, and we're going to use him as a model in this illustration to paint in Photoshop. And so in order for me to improve, I will be following WLOP, WLOP. I don't know how to pronounce it. I don't even know if it's a him or her, but you can look at the illustrations and see that they are freaking amazing. So just go on YouTube, find the video, and boom, we're following this tutorial. Before that, real quick, I know the vast majority of you guys follow me for my video content here on YouTube, and you guys have supported me all through the years, even purchasing my published books, Apple Black, and all of that, reading the free chapters and so on, and I appreciate the support greatly. I've loved the journey along with you guys the whole way. So now I'll be making even more content, and some content might not always fit here on YouTube. So I found out Amino Apps has launched this new stories feature, kind of like IG, but with many stronger capabilities to produce videos like here on YouTube, with an already strong video library and a lot of videos in this new story format. Can't find anywhere else. Videos quick and easy to consume, and I think I can make pretty cool short videos that are behind the scenes stuff for my book, Apple Black, you know, as well as quick short writing tutorial videos analyzing my pages and my illustrations and why I'm making the decisions that I'm making. Kind of wanted to make videos kind of like that, and so it was pretty cool when Amino reached out, and I thought, perfect. I've already made one Amino story that's available on the app right now, so you guys can go on the app and follow me there. Use my link in the description to download Amino, find my stories by Whyt Manga, same name, and you guys can follow me and hit the bell over there for notifications. An example of how you can do that: just make sure you follow and hit the bell so you never miss an upload. Every time you watch my Amino videos, you will be supporting me. You guys have no idea. So use the link in the description, go check out my first Amino story out there, and just enjoy. And now to the main course of this video, where I do an anime manga digital art speed painting while trying to follow this dash tutorial. WLOP over here starts off with a very loose sketch, and that's what I'm going to do. Now, with me, again, this tutorial, while I'm following it, there will still be aspects of just me that seep into this illustration and the constructing of this illustration. So while WLOPing might do something in one way, I might, you know, tweak things just a bit, because I'm not drawing the exact same thing that WLOP is drawing. I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm taking a lot of liberties, and so, you know, sketching pretty loosely, I chose not to do, and kind of do things a little bit my way. Even though it's loose, it's not nearly as loose as WLOPing did in his or her video. And here, again, I'm drawing a completely different character. The facial structure is completely different. Just the way my character is structured would probably make it more difficult for me to use this tutorial as a guide. So while I'm trying to follow the tutorial, it's more of me being inspired by the techniques being used in the tutorial here and there, but not 100%. Flipflop now proceeds to paint blocks of color to separate things. So I do the same, and I pick the same colors that WLOP Ultra over here has picked. I only deviate color-wise only when I feel necessary. Again, we are essentially coloring two different characters, two different types of characters, and I'm also trying to evoke a slightly different mood. So I'll only deviate when I feel necessary, but for the most part, I'm trying to do everything else as much as I can exactly with the tutorial. Picking the same colors, doing the exact same things. Obviously, we'll deviate as well in like brushes and stuff like that, but I try to be as close as possible. And while putting all these blocks, I also render a little bit because the tutorial does so as well. W has picked like a really dark blue to kind of go over everything, so I'm doing the same, especially with the hair. So, you know, the darker you go, so it's almost like painting in grayscale with a slight blue hue to it. Then Big Man uses the adjustment layer curve tool to change the skin tone. So like select that area and then use the curves tool to change the skin color, or just change the color overall RGB wise. And I didn't even know that was possible. And that's pretty much how you change the color of everything, you know, on a flat base layer. And, you know, so that was pretty cool to know, and that's one of the perks of doing these tutorials and learning from a lot of people. You then start to pick up a lot of things that you didn't know prior, and then you can add that to whatever final style you developed for yourself at the end of the day. And Pikachu continues to render, adding color here and there. You know, some of the things have to do with highlights, and so some of my, you know, experience doing paintings is coming in, so it's making it a little easier for me to understand what's going on. But the tutorial is really sped up and hard to follow. See, they're adding colors in like weird places and adding certain colors based off of the environment and the colors of the environment. So there's like this cement bluish gray tone that's hitting the skin as well. That's supposed to be there just to make the illustration a whole lot more realistic because of the blue skies, and like something different is happening on the other side because something is different happening in the environment on the other side. I also slightly made a mistake with the layer I put it on. So layers and how the illustration and the whole file is being layered is very different from what I'm normally used to when I have like the sketch layer on a separate layer. But here is actually done on one layer and it just keeps adding on and piling on. I think that's the approach that WLOP Man has chosen, and so that's what I'm going to try and do. And so now I've tried to put the sketch layer back on and paint over it directly on that same layer. The whole thing is weird because you have to just trust the process and just trust it, because it looks kind of messy, and I'm just hoping at the end of the day it's going to look good. Yeah, so before jumping into tutorials like this, it's always good to understand the basics of Photoshop. It'll just help you understand the tutorials that you aspire to follow a whole lot easier, especially when they're this sped up. Understanding value, understanding, you know, light sources, when they hit and when they don't, or when they should and when they shouldn't, and the intensity of them, and how, you know, for it to be realistic, it's not a consistent flat look overall. So you kind of have to keep all those things in mind. So luckily, because I've done a lot of practice, I believe that has made this whole process a little easier for me. And so here again, I know that it's difficult for me to get some really dark values in here because I don't want to go with like a flat black, because that just wouldn't exist here. You can find things that are really dark, but they will still have a hue to it, and I have to change the skin tone because at the end of the day, I'm trying to be realistic with it, and the hue on your lips and versus the rest of your skin is different, and nothing is really flat. I know I'm going to have to go over everything here. Even the skin is still kind of flat, apart from the parts that are hit with lights and shades and things of that nature. But again, overall, just rendering and trying to make it as best I can, going over the sketches and making sure that that's not visible. But it's also nice because the sketches are helping to guide what I do. And then from here we go to the next step, which is actually the more fun aspect of things, I believe, and that's where WLOP Man here has the color dodge, and which is a pretty popular tool in Photoshop, and we're just going to use this to show where the light hits the character, especially from the side that's the warmer side of the illustration. And you know, you have a little warning there to not overdo it because it can easily ruin the illustration. And I think the effect that it has, it's really, really useful to bring life to the illustration. I try to do it in a different way just to test things out, and you know, that's what I do with these tutorials. Sometimes I experiment and do things a different way just to see what would happen, and it did not work out. But going back to what I've been told in the illustration, just sticking to the script, I think everything is kind of working out pretty well. Using a soft brush for the color dodge especially, and then changing the brush blending mode, because you can change the blending mode on the brush directly versus the layer, and that just changes the dynamic a little bit. Again, still keeping it flat on one layer. And from there on out, it's more of like a rinse and repeat attitude. You're just rendering and rendering and rendering and doing what you've done to one section of the illustration and trying to make that as best as you can. You apply that same attitude to the rest of the illustration, which is what I'm doing, and which is what I got from the speed painting from WLOP. And then obviously just keep going. I mean, the places where you hit the illustration with the color dodge, you want to make sure that it makes sense for the light to hit that. And then in some cases, you want to make sure that you're drawing shadows on it and having it overlap to where the color dodge is not all the way consistent. So some of the hair is going to form shadows, and the color dodge just helps everything pop. You also find yourself using the eyedropper tool a lot, so it's not every time you go back to the color dodge. You might just want to grab a piece with the eyedropper and then just use that and just keep rendering and rendering. So it has this very traditional painting feel, even though it's digital media. And then Loppy goes up to the filter here and uses the Liquify tool. He or she says a pretty useful tool, especially when painting faces, and I think it comes in handy. It allows you to kind of move things around and reshape things. Maybe if something is shaped inappropriately or weird, you can just kind of correct that. So I try to use that in the illustration, again sticking to the tutorial, and I use it in the nose area because I feel like, you know, that could look better. After that, things got to be a little easier for me because then, you know, I understood the basics and behind the tutorial, and I started doing things on my own without actually having to go back and forth with the tutorial all the time. Those who watch tutorials, you know what I mean. It was kind of fun. Again, there's a lot of rendering over the sketch, and then you would then use the curve tool like we did in the start of the video to change the color of certain things, and you go over it and just keep going over it. And the way you work with the layers is that you know, you want to like remember stuff, so you can flatten everything in the layer area and then duplicate it so that you can go back to it, because the Control Z only works for so long. So the part you want to save without having to save the whole file every time is you merge the layer, duplicate it, and then just start working on top of the new layer while you've saved the old version in a merged layer under it. Hopefully all that makes sense. It's obviously the same technique applied here, and I've seen a lot of digital painters use the same approach. And then Mr. Flipflop here kind of flips the canvas sometimes, because doing that makes it easier to catch errors and mistakes in your illustration, and they can just correct those mistakes. So sometimes you want to flip the canvas, and I've seen other artists do the same thing as well. And so I do the same thing. And then from there on out, you kind of know everything you need to then finish everything off. And you can see he's just adding color in certain places for more highlights and bounce lights. You know, I try to do the same, adding more details. I try to do the same. Another thing is you don't always have to use the same brush type, brush shape, whatever, to do the illustration, and you kind of have to bounce around and use different kinds of brushes to get whatever results you want. And then it's just a lot of, you know, doing the same thing over again. Again, I'm back on the color dodge mode and doing certain things to make it work. I think the illustration is really coming together. I think it's come together a lot right now. And now I'm changing brushes, making the hair look a little more natural, changing the brush type I was using to something smaller. You want to be resizing the brush in the process as well. Putting some light in there. Gonna do certain things that are just my touch, to be honest. The things that I didn't see in the tutorial, just trying to make it my own for the most part, which is the intent in the first place. The whole loppy disc thing was more to get a nice feel of it and stronger understanding of how other creators approach this type of stuff and learn from LOP in the process. More LOP inspired than just me copying straight up. And one of the last things Flubber adds to their illustrations is a field blur. And I didn't actually use a field blur. I think I used a Gaussian blur. Gaussian? Is that how it's pronounced? I don't know how to pronounce anything. I'm sorry, guys. And the goal there was to just give the illustration overall depth and a focus. So with his or her illustration, you're focusing on the face. With mine is the same, so everything around it is kind of blurred to a certain degree. So I'm just selecting the parts I want to blur and acting accordingly. Quick apology to the artist, I can't pronounce your name, but I hope you've enjoyed all the nicknames I've given LOP. You guys can have your own LOP nicknames in the comments. I think we can have a lot of fun with that. Finally, I added more personal touches to the illustration to make it more me, give it a really nice glow with a Gaussian blur and the lighten mode, and I think it just has this extra touch to it. And boom, mission accomplished for the most part. I hope you guys watching have enjoyed the illustration. Don't forget to like, and Detroit smash the subscribe button. United States has smashed that bell so you stay notified each time I upload absolutely anything. Now go check out Apple Black and Saturday AM. Links to everything you could possibly need will be in the description, including my social media, where you guys can go follow me on Instagram, follow Saturday AM on Instagram, the list goes on. And LOP, if for whatever reason you're watching this video, I'd like to thank you for posting your tutorial. We at Saturday AM would love to interview you in a magazine if interested. Just holla at me, bro. Holla at me. Or girl? I'm not sure. Actually, I just checked your DeviantArt, and they are in fact a dude. Real name, Wang Ling. Thank you, Wang. So now we know what the W and the L stands for. But the OP. OP, overpowered? Probably overpowered. Huge shout out to my patrons that make this possible. Arrow, Ayusafu, Fedo, Hack Wolfen, Sarah, Tony, Where's My Crown, the list goes on. Love you guys. Please enjoy my other videos. If you want me to do this with other digital painters, just let me know in the comments below. Manga, and I'm out.